2024 to order. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Patrick, discussing with the board, what I'd like to do is run the public hearings from D back to A. I know we have a lot of residents here, and I don't want to have them have to sit through some of the, I don't want to say boring, but
Oh, it's boring.
non-essential to the public.
That is fine, Mr. Chair. I would also add or request that the board strike from this evening's agenda and reschedule to the executive committee 8A under new business.
All right, with that, board have any changes? Then I need a motion to approve as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, item number 3 is approval of payment of the bills. Steve, you done?
I did. I signed all the payment ledgers. I'll move to approve payment of the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, then item 4 is approval of minutes from January 3rd, 2024.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the January 3rd, 2024 meeting as is.
I will second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, we have 4 items on consent agenda. The board okay with them?
I will move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, then we're going to start. Just a point of order, Chad, can we do a waive the reading for all of these?
Yes, you
Or
can.
do I have to do them independently?
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. No, you have to do each one independently.
Right. All right, so we're going to start off with item 8D. This is a public, or 7D, sorry, a public hearing for Parkview Court. So I need a motion to waive the reading.
I'll move to waive the reading that was properly published.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, then I need a motion to open up the public hearing.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries. Larry, you gonna overview this for us?
Sure, I have a short PowerPoint to share. I think it's a similar presentation that was given at the neighborhood meeting that was conducted last week for Parkview Court. But we'll walk through it for some people that may not have been at that neighborhood meeting. So Parkview Court is located just off Portland Avenue on the east side of the township. And so give a few details about the project, including costs as well. Originally, this was constructed in 1996. The court is about 0.2 miles in length. We rate our pavements on a scale of 0 to 5, and the pavement rating for this street was 1.53. It does have concrete curb and gutter, and the street width is 30 feet. If the board might recall, a couple years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, we looked at a mill and overlay for this street. And based on the study at that time, the roadway condition and mainly the curb and gutter was so far deteriorated that mill and overlay didn't make sense. So we have the geotechnical information that we did back a few years ago when we did that study. We use that here. We evaluate the utilities on all our projects as we're considering street improvements. And then we sent out questionnaires to the public through the study. And then the study looks at kind of the costs of doing improvements, funding, assessments, and schedule. So we'll walk through that. Ultimately, based on the study back a few years ago, and then, doing the study now, we're recommending reconstruction for the streets, and including curb and gutter replacement. You can see the picture there. The joints for the curb are deteriorating on basically 80% of the area. Street lighting was brought up as a part of the questionnaires and the neighborhood meetings. So that's going to be reviewed with this project if it moves forward. We'd look at some minor utility repairs on this area. And some of the comments we received either through the questionnaire, through some of the neighborhood meetings, was Speeding safety on Portland Avenue was a concern. Some specific drainage issues that we'll review as the project moves forward. And then the street lighting, as I mentioned. So we're looking at, it's a street reconstruction, but we want to look at trying to salvage some of the materials that are out on that street. So we're looking at reclamation of the existing bituminous and mixing it with the gravel that's underneath the roadway and using that as base for the new roadway. We talked about the curb and gutter be fully replaced, the minor utility repairs, and then we would have, as we're repairing or replacing that curb, there would be driveway and yard impacts, normally between 3 to 5 feet from the existing curb line. So here's a few pictures of curb and gutter being installed and put in place for a project like this. So you can kind of see, mainly over in here, this is a neighborhood where the impacts, go back 3, 5 to 10 feet back. So, this might be your only opportunity that you're in front of us. So I would like to put a slide in here on what to expect for these types of projects. Basically, during these types of projects, you're going to be living in a construction zone. So when they do the reclamation project, or the reclamation with the grinding of the asphalt and mixing with the gravel, you're basically living on a gravel roadway during the duration of the project. So there's large equipment that you have to be aware of, and they have to be aware of you. They do have some poor sight lines. So, we usually like people to be considerate of that large equipment and try to make eye contact with the operator to make sure they see you as you're getting in and out of your homes. Of course, there'll be uneven surfaces and temporary traffic control changes. Weather can play havoc on this project, whether it's too little rain or too much rain, in terms of dust or mud. And then, there's the noise of construction equipment. On this project, we'll have a number of different flags and wood stakes and paint on yards to mark the new curb and those types of things. So just to be aware of that. And then to expect, impacts to yards and driveways, irrigation. But those would be restored when the project's concluded. So getting into costs, a small project, but when the costs still do add up, it's roughly $650,000 in total cost for the project. So of those costs, portion of that cost is proposed to be assessed, and there's 20 homes in this area. So those costs will be distributed to those 20 homes, and we're looking at a preliminary assessment rate of $11,000 at this time, which we will be confirming through an appraisal. So this is what we call the preliminary assessment map. It shows those 20 homes on Parkview Court. So assessments aren't the only funding source for this project. It makes up a roughly 40 to 50% of the cost, $220,000 for assessments. Other township funds or levy, $422,000. And then some of the utility funds pick up their share for the water main valve adjustments or manhole adjustments or sanitary sewer. And so a little bit of storm sewer work on the project. So the schedule, we've had a few neighborhood meetings this fall and last week. And tonight is the public hearing itself. We would have another neighborhood meeting if this project moves forward, and we are preparing plans and specifications that we can share with the public in March. This project would then go back to the board to accept the plans and authorize bidding. And we'd have bidding occurring in April and May, a bid opening then. And it would come back to the board for an award. I haven't had any bid openings yet this year, but it's always interesting what kind of bids you receive on these types of projects. And the board at that time can look at those bids and see if they're reasonable and appropriate with the cost estimates that we've provided and determine whether to go forward or not. If the project continues to move forward, then we would come back and have an assessment hearing in the fall after most of the construction is completed, where the assessment rate will be fully or finally determined. And you'll have your opportunity to speak to the board on whether you think that amount is appropriate. Communications are an important part of this project. But, you know, like, as I mentioned, we're doing construction in your neighborhood. So we like to have a lot of interaction and make sure you're informed on the project. We have a project website for this project that's located or shown on the screen, and I think some of the mailings have shown it as well. If the project moves forward, there'll be a newsletter that's provided that'll have a lot of information in preparing you for the construction. It'll have the emergency contact information, the contact information for the inspector that would be on the job full time. It will have the schedule. It will have details about the work. And then it also have a lot of frequently asked questions that we see on these types of projects. A lot of those frequently asked questions are around, you know, my mail or trash. And so we'll have information at that, if the project moves forward, that will be shared through that newsletter. And then we do daily updates that you can sign up for on the website. It's a good way to keep informed on the project and get a daily email about what is happening on the project. So next steps tonight is the public hearing, and then if the council or the board feels it appropriate to move forward, we would need 4/5 votes for the project. So basically, everyone, a full 3-0 vote for this project to move forward. And then we'd have, if the project moves forward, we'd have that next open house in March to look at the plans. My contact information is on the screen there. I think it's been some of the mailers as well. But also there's Jim Studensky, who would be the project manager during construction. And then Sarah, it would be the inspector on the job. She'd be your daily contact if you have a concern about the construction in your yard. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
You mentioned a open house last week. Any overriding feedback you got? I know you said street lighting, but anything else that struck you?
Yeah, this is the second meeting of the neighborhood, and while I wasn't there, I was out last week. Jim mentioned kind of similar feedback as the first meeting. The street lighting was a concern. The assessments are always a concern, but.
All right. So this is a reconstruction, reclamation as much as possible, but
Yep.
really a reconstruction. It was built not even 30 years ago. Seems to be a little quick to reconstruct. Is there anything specific we can do this time so that we don't have to do it again in 30 years and we can get maybe 50 years out of it?
Yeah, that's really the goal, is to get 50 years out of your streets with proper maintenance along the way. You know, the curb is deteriorating prematurely, and that's one of the main factors. The bituminous thickness appears to be substandard, and so we would put the proper thickness in. And so we'd follow the geotechnical recommendations that, the pavement recommendations that were provided by the geotechnical consultant to make sure it has that construction is meeting the standard.
Just for everyone's information, is there anything that we will be doing on a routine maintenance to try and stretch this out going forward?
Oh, yes. So you will see, just even 2 to 3 years after construction, you'll see the first cracks or seal coating on the street, and that would help protect that surface. You'll see that sooner. That's a kind of a newer standard that's happening in the industry. You're doing that first chip seal sooner in the life cycle than historically has been done in the past. And then, 20 years down the line, you're going to see and you might see another chip seal or crack sealing within 20 years, and then a mill and overlay at around year 20.
Thank you.
The curb and gutter, what kind of curbing are we putting in there?
Yes, that's a great question. We had some discussion about the style of curb, and it's going to be similar to what you see on your screen here. It's a surmountable type curb. There was some discussion at least at the first public neighborhood meeting about changing to a barrier style curb now that all the driveways are located where they're located. But that would have additional impact because now you're changing the height of that curb because it goes from 4-inch height to a 6-inch height. And so you have a little bit more restoration back. So we're recommending just sticking with the same curb type.
And for the general neighborhood, the surmountable curb is appropriate in your opinion versus a higher curb, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, usually when you have when you know where the driveways are, you could go to that barrier type curb, but the cost will go up a little bit.
And normally, the seal coating in the past has been done at what, like 6 and 7 years?
Yeah.
And current recommendation that following what we have done in the last few years is to move it to year 2 or 3.
Yep.
Okay.
And then another one at year 7, 8.
Nope, I'm good for now.
Larry, you have a approximate timing on when the appraisals will be in?
I'll check on that tomorrow. I'll follow up with the appraiser tomorrow.
Okay, so they don't need the actual plans and specs that
I've
doesn't
sent
affect.
them the feasibility report. That's what they really need is the feasibility report. They have that.
All right, and then the talk on street lighting, was it explained to the residents that usually street lighting is over and above and it's something they have to pick up the complete cost for?
I think we had some minor discussion about that. And I think actually for both neighborhoods were looking at additional lighting.
Because I know after that, the township does pick up the tab to maintain and pay the utility bills, and I don't know what that cost is, but, so that's something that we would take care of after it's already installed and done. That's one other thing.
On the street lighting though, the neighborhood themselves, if they have to kind of collectively agree that that's what they want. You can't have, it's got to be more than just one person wanting street lighting. So if it ends up happening, they've got to have a consensus of the neighborhood, I guess, to move forward, I believe.
Yeah, and plus too, I think you have a standard on how far apart you can put them. I mean, it's not like you can start planting them every 100 yards. It's usually on corners and main intersections. All right, I think that's all I have. Any other questions from the board? All right, I'd be looking for a motion to open up for public comment.
I'll move to open the public comment portion of the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well, if you're here to speak to this one, you need to come up to the podium, just state your name and address with any questions directed to the board.
All members of the board, my name is Rolf Parsons. I live at 2576 Parkview Court. There are three things that we're appreciative of. We really appreciate your willingness to make this a reconstruction rather than the original plan. We brought that concern to you a few years ago, and it's really great that you're willing to do what needs to be done to make our street in proper shape. We appreciate the communications. I think we're off to a good start. We like the meetings that we've had. I think we have some good confidence that you're hearing what we're saying. And we also appreciate your willingness to help mitigate the costs. We understand that nothing is locked in and you're going to learn what they are, but the fact that we're not bearing the entire brunt is important to us. We have, as mentioned, I just want to reiterate, we have 2 safety concerns. One of them is the location of the mailboxes, the temporary mailboxes that will be required. And I don't have a solution for that yet. We haven't had a discussion with our residents, but what I want to highlight is that if they're forced to be on Portland Avenue, it's a very dangerous situation. Very, very dangerous. Portland is very busy and now very fast street, and I've mentioned this before, so I won't harp on it any more than necessary. I know you're hearing me. But we may be seeking things like, and I know you don't own the street, but if you can advocate for us with the county, it would be helpful. Reduce the speed limit, perhaps put up one of those signs that monitors the car's speed and reflects it out to them. You have done that for us on a temporary basis in the past. We may appreciate doing that again if we're forced to be on Portland. And at least have the project managers come out and take a look at the situation so you appreciate. What we're worried about is that if residents are, drive up in a car and park and try to get their mail, cars come down Portland and around the curve just up the street a little bit really fast. And frankly, there's tire tracks all over the side of that road. They don't stay on the road very successfully. So we want to really make that point. The other concern we have, as mentioned, is the lighting on our court. There are street lights, but it's dark. And we have a number of senior citizens who live alone. They're concerned, they're anxious about it. This would be a great opportunity if we could add a couple more lights, perhaps on either side of the island that we have. If we could do that, it would help us feel a little more safe, a little more secure. A stretch would be if we could have access to power out on that island, because there are times when it would be helpful for us in community events to have a power source. But this is a good time to do it, so I just bring that point up. But those are our main concerns. Again, we appreciate your willingness to hear them, and thank you for all you do.
Well, before you go there, Walt,
Certainly.
Larry, is there an upgrade for street lighting? I know LEDs are big now, or has that all been already done? Is it still the old halogens, or?
I couldn't answer that question on what is out there now.
I think ours have been upgraded to halogen.
Okay.
Pardon?
When the streetlight knocked over, they put LED back in.
Oh, LED.
Because I know LEDs are a
LED.
bit brighter.
Okay.
And then your other concern was, Patrick, maybe I know last meeting we had talked about referring to the county on the speed issue on that. Have you heard anything?
No, it's seasonal. They're not going to get to it till the spring.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Well, I guess to the point, though, there will be, we did formally ask Ramsey County to post lower speed limits.
Oh, great.
And to put up some kind of notification that, in fact, we even put in a request for stop sign.
We did.
Which, to Pat's point, won't take place until springtime.
Oh, we appreciate that.
But we have requested that through our safety commission.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, thanks, Walt.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Parkview Court? Going once, going twice? All right, I'm going to close the public portion for this public hearing.
I'll move to close the public portion of the hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, does the board have any other questions of staff or Larry or the attorney?
The only thing I'd ask is if the Public Safety Commission does get some information that it's passed along to whoever the project manager are about the safety piece of that, so that the community is informed.
Absolutely.
It would help a lot, keeping it up in front of them, so.
All right, hearing that then, Larry, you're going to want two separate motions on this? First two is adopt the resolution?
Yeah, there's two different resolutions in the packet.
All right, what's the board's pleasure?
I'll move based on the town engineer and staff review and recommendations, adopt the resolution ordering the improvements 2023-3.
I'll second.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Then the second one is preparation of plans and specs.
I'll make a motion to, based on town engineering and staff, I guess, ordering the preparation of plans and specifications for a cost not to exceed, it says, $32,900.
All right. Are you done?
I am done now.
Second.
All right, motion made and second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. All right, thank you. All right, we're gonna go back to, we have another one, improvements for Mallard Ponds. Again, I need a motion to waive the reading.
I'll move to waive the reading that was properly published.
There's
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And then I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Larry, you wanna go over this one?
Sure. So similarly, this project is also being looked at for 2024. It's a larger project. This project also had a neighborhood meeting last week, and so this presentation is the same presentation, so I'll run through that. Some of the things may be repetitive to some of the slides that you just saw. So the improvements are to the Mallard Ponds area. This project is a larger project, as I mentioned, 2.6 miles in length. The pavement rating in this neighborhood ranges between 1.17 and 2.06 out of that 5. It does have concrete curb and gutter. The condition of the curb and gutter is a lot better here. In fact, it's you can see some issues right in your on the one picture there, but for the most part, the rest of the curb and gutter is in good shape and would be retained with this project. So it's a different type of project than the Parkview Court project. Street width 30 to 32 feet width. Again, a feasibility study was completed. The soil borings were performed and coring of the pavement was also done in this neighborhood. And we saw somewhat of a mix of things on the coring. You can see that core on the screen. We're seeing some areas where the layers of asphalt are deteriorating between those layers. So that leads us to more of that reclamation on this project as well versus a mill and overlay. We're also seeing some other settlements and things in the neighborhood. We evaluate utilities on these projects. Again, questionnaires were sent out to the neighborhood, and the response rate was fantastic. 50% was one of the higher ones we've seen. Usually we're between 40 and 50, but this was right at 50%. So we appreciate the comments. We use those comments to develop the plans and address the issues that you're seeing. Again, the feasibility study looked at costs, funding, assessments, and schedule. Again, the reclamation is recommended for the project. Some minor curb repairs. Street lighting, again, on this project was a question and would be reviewed if the project moves forward. Some existing storm sewer systems would also be reviewed for improvements. We heard some water quality concerns on Polar Bear Lane that the township staff has done some flushing out there, which has hopefully cleared things up a bit, but we're also reviewing that for potential improvements. With this project, we have some Rice Creek Watershed District requirements that need to be completed with this project. And then some of the major comments we received a lot of comments, as I mentioned, but it was the main comments that we saw were speeding through the neighborhood, speeding and traffic concerns on County Road J in Portland, some specific drainage issues, which we can try to help with the project. And then again, like the street lighting was also discussed. So this is also planned for reclamation. So in this case, we keep the existing curbs in place, do some spot repairs, but reclamation, again, is that grinding of the asphalt and mixing with the gravel underneath to create a new solid base for the roadway. The excess material will be removed, and the reclamation product would be compacted, and then a new pavement placed over the roadway. I think with this project, we're gonna make sure that the crown of the road sheds the water from the center line. We're seeing some areas where the crown over time may have settled or is not there. We're gonna do we're gonna make that a point to make sure and establish good crown on this roadway to shed that water to the curb lines. So minor utility repairs, storm sewer pond maintenance would be performed with this project. Mention the curb and gutter, and then that driveway and yard restoration. So on this project, because we're not replacing all the curb, the curb would be spot repaired. And in some cases, if you live on the project, you might have no curb replaced in front of your house, or you might have some where the curb is cracked or settled, or there's a drainage issue. In those cases, if it's in front of your driveway, we may need to have you park along the road while that concrete hardens before you get back in your driveway. But it'd be on a case-by-case basis, and so it's dependent on the condition of the curb in front of your home. So again, I have some similar pictures in here. This is the reclamation machine grinding and mixing that material to create that new base for the roadway. And then we follow the recommendations of the geotechnical engineer on what that depth is to provide a good base for the roadway. And then also follow the recommendations for pavement thickness. And the picture on the right kind of shows a typical spot curb repair. So they're going in, they're disturbing the yard, or in some cases the driveway behind that area, and it's usually 3 to 5 feet behind the curb. If it's on the driveway and you have a bituminous driveway, we may need to saw and remove some of the bituminous and put a new bituminous in there. If it's a concrete driveway, we would have to go back to the nearest joint, so you don't have a different joint through there. This is the same slide as the previous presentation. I maybe won't go through it. It's in this project, I just want to highlight, as a larger project, you know, they may reclaim half at a time and work on a half at a time. We haven't worked out those details yet, but you might have a period of time where it's maybe longer than the Parkview Court project, where you're seeing a gravel condition. And you might say to yourself, well, why aren't they working here? And they just might be working on a different street in the neighborhood. So usually on a project that's larger, you have some areas that might feel like there's nothing happening for long periods of time, but it's really they're working on other areas of the project. Costs for this project were just over $4 million for our estimate for the project. On this project, we are recommending a preliminary assessment rate of $8,000. And again, we are confirming that with an appraisal. There are 239 homes on this parcel, or units on this parcel, or in this project. And I can show you the map. They're all single-family residential. There is some park property that gets assigned some units as well. And then each property is assigned basically 1 unit each. Corner lots are assessed at a half unit on each improved side. So properties that are border or on County Road J may see a half a unit assessment versus a full assessment. We also have a few properties that are deemed to be subdividable that would be assessed multiple units. And those are located on the map here. You can see on Santera Circle, there's a couple larger lots there that would be assigned 2 units. Funding for this project, kind of when you break apart the assessments, roughly half the project is assessed to the property owners. And then township funds pick up 1.6 million. And then those water, sanitary, and storm sewer funds pick up those portions of the project. Some of those pond repairs that we were talking about would go under the storm utility fund. This schedule is also following the same schedule as the Parkview Court. And so we'd likely hold the meetings on the same night again. Just makes for better efficiency for staff. And so we'd have another neighborhood meeting if this project moves forward to showcase the plans and impacts to yards and driveways. And then it follows, again, the same schedule for bid opening and construction. This will be a longer project, so we may be focusing our design more heavily on this project to get it going and under construction sooner. And then in the fall, we would have the assessment hearing where we will have final assessment numbers. That there'll be another hearing for you to come and speak to the board about your opinions on those assessment amounts. Communications are similar to the last project, so we have a project website dedicated to this project. Again, we'll have an inspector out on the job that you can call or email and meet if you have concerns, specific concerns for the project. There'll be that same newsletter with contact information, schedule, frequently asked questions for this project. And then we'll have daily updates that you can sign up for on the website to get those daily emails. And then if you are someone that has concrete curb going across your driveway, you'll get a special notice on when that's occurring and when you need to get out of your driveway and for how long. So next steps tonight are the public hearing and then again, order the improvements. And again, it's a 4/5 vote for moving forward tonight. And we have the same contacts for this project. So Sarah would be covering both projects for inspection. So if the project moves forward and you have an individual concern, once construction starts, she's your contact for discussing your individual concern. Thank you.
All right, Steve?
I think in a past meeting that we have had internally, some of the street areas here had much different subsoil concerns than others. So there'll be deeper repairs than just straight reclamation?
It'll be straight reclamation.
Okay.
There may be some subcutting, but we could have that on either side. I know the neighborhoods aren't exactly constructed on the same time, but we see those subcutting potential on both sides or the whole area, and it'll be individual. So what we do is after we reclaim the street, we test roll and see what areas are showing up for that need to be corrected. And so we're seeing that the potential on both, on really the whole neighborhood, there's potential for some of that.
I remember some of the driveways off the main road in off of J. It was pretty poor as it entered. I think off of Portland, it was also a different subsoil. So it's all being addressed at the same time. The second question, and I should have brought it up the first time, the lighting. At what point do you, going forward with this project, do the residents have to make a decision on street lighting? To be in, so it doesn't interfere with the rest of the project?
On this project, it could happen after the project even, because we're not repairing, we're not replacing the curb.
Okay,
We're just doing spot repairs. So they would likely, if they need to extend some wiring to a lighting location, they would bore under the boulevard or under the driveways to get there.
'cause it's existing already.
Yeah.
So consequently, on the first project we're not talking about right now, that should be done sooner rather than
Yeah.
later?
Yeah.
They're nodding, they understand. Okay. And the water quality issues, you said, have been being addressed, and it's in a different fund. That's not part of the cost project for the reclamation of this road project?
Yeah, if we are gonna do, and we have some costs in there for replacing some water main in this estimate. We're still evaluating whether we need to do that. I know the Public Works has done some flushing out there. And so we're seeing how that plays out and then determining if we should be doing that water main repair near Polar Bear Lane.
Okay, and the last question has to do with the dividable units. Those people know who have lots that are considered dividable as they sit here tonight? So as far as a unit assessment charge, do they know who they are?
If they're paying attention, they would.
Okay.
But if the project moves forward and it's assessed, they would see those units when they get their assessment notices.
Okay, but to avoid surprises,
Wasn't
there's-
there a preliminary assessment mailed out?
Not a
notice?
No, not a preliminary assessment. No, it said we communicate the findings of the feasibility study and point them to the website if they want to review that feasibility study. But we don't specifically point out people's assessment at this point.
so as we've calculated the residential unit price, someone can tell the public which units are which
Yeah.
ownership is two. So they don't, I'm just trying to make it not a surprise at
Yeah.
that point. It
Yeah.
might be better to get it out front for those that are concerned that they have two assessments coming.
Well, this area, I don't want to say that new, but it's new enough that if it was dividable, would it have been stubbed out for two?
I don't know that for sure.
Usually, like I said, anything after
Usually.
90, if it was dividable and if the builder was correct in building it on one lot and leaving the other one empty, there was always a program, or it was set up to put sewer and water stubs in.
I'm sure Sarah knows that answer. I can ask her that.
Well, I'm just getting at then,
Yeah.
usually the property owners know if it's already stubbed,
Yeah.
odds are you're gonna have another assessment.
Right. Plus the limited surprises, I guess it's
I understand.
basically.
Anything else, Steve?
Nope, I'm good.
Scott?
You mentioned that this is a larger project and that there might be some gravel for a while. Are you anticipating it will all be torn up at once and then worked, or is it going to be kind of staged?
That's what we need to work out with the contractor, or we provide it in the specs that only a certain amount can be open. We've done it several different ways in the past. It's a balance. We don't want to tell them. You might get a higher price if you dictate everything.
You don't want to tell them how to do their job?
Yeah,
Okay,
but
okay.
we're going to be, but in this case, when it's 2.6 miles, maybe we provide some language in there that they can only open so much before they have to pave back something. So
Well, the communications will be updated as this progresses.
yeah, if we get into design, we'll start thinking more about how it would be staged.
Do you anticipate both projects going on at the same time by the same?
They're going to be bid separately,
Separately, okay.
so they could be.
So Sarah and Jim are going to be busy going between the two.
Yep.
They better not be speeding on Portland. Okay?
Yes.
Sarah walks everywhere anyway.
Just saying. I'm done.
Well, I know in the past, the last 5 to 7 years now, town's been really focused on getting our roads up to grade. I mean, we kind of kicked this can down the road a lot. And I can remember 8, 10 years ago, we were assessing almost 100% on these projects. When you're talking $4 million, you can't assess that much. So we made a command decision that we have to start bonding for these things and kind of spread that cost out over the whole township. So everybody's helping to pick up the cost to fix all of our roads. I know it's still a hard hit on residents when you see these numbers, but from what we've seen, I mean, we've had projects that go $25,000, $30,000 per resident. So we're very conscious of what this costs the residents. We do everything we can to try to keep those numbers intact. And usually, depending on what kind of bidding we get, it's very possible those numbers might look a little better. We've had a couple of years ago that the bidding came in quite low, so we were able to drop those assessment numbers. So it all depends on the climate. And now everything's up. Inflation's up, fuel costs are up, equipment's up, just the price of help is up. So it's getting tougher to, we count on our engineers to get a really solid handle on these prices, so we're not shocked at the end, because the board has to decide if these numbers come in higher than what the engineers have decided, then we have to go back to the drawing board, because we've already talked to you folks about assessment costs, and if it's going to be more, we got to go back to the drawing board and start over. So we rely on our engineers quite heavily just to make sure that we're in the ballpark before we start these projects. With that, I need a motion to open up for public comment.
I'll move to open the hearing for public comment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Again, if you want to speak to this one, you have to come up to the podium with your name and address.
Hi there, Tom Merrill, 5979 Mallard Ponds Drive. Just a couple of quick questions. Steve had mentioned that initially there were, on the project when it was first put in, there were some subsoil issues, just kind of the entrance of Mallard Ponds Drive from Portland there. That's actually right where I live. We had a big patch out in front of our house for quite a while. And also, Larry had mentioned that there were, you're going to try to get the street crowned a little bit more. And I think you also mentioned that you've got some cutting areas that need to be addressed. I would say, please do those things, because my personal just intuition, and I'm not an engineer, and I didn't see I didn't read through the whole 190 pages, but, and actually Steve had mentioned, or Scott had mentioned earlier, that on the other project, he thought maybe it had deteriorated a little quick. Would, in your opinion, were there maybe some issues in terms of settling, whatever else, that made this come up a little quicker than it should be? Because I'm on the half of the neighborhood that's a little bit newer than the other one. It seemed like it was a little quick.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a little quick, although we could have done mill and overlay maybe sooner to maybe reestablish some of the crown. It probably would have need to have been done at maybe year 15 or 20.
Yeah.
That may have extended some of the life of the underlying pavement, but
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I think the settling issues might have contributed to it as well.
yeah.
Like I said, I know in front of our home there was, pretty much settling. We had to wait a year before we put in our driveway just because it was settling so much. So,
Yeah, I mean, with this neighborhood, with keeping the curb and recycling that bituminous and mixing it, we'll have material, that extra material, to help address any subcut areas. We can put that because we'll have to remove 3 to 4 inches to make way for the new bituminous. We can use that material, but don't have to haul a lot of new material in to correct some of those subcut areas without having to haul in a bunch of other material.
good. Well, I appreciate you guys doing that. And just
Yeah.
very closely supervise when they do roll that and you find the settling areas that they
Yep.
get that up to snuff. So, thank you.
Larry, as a general rule, roughly how deep do you expect to have, I don't know, material under the pavement? How far down do you go to have a base?
6 to 8 inches, usually on a local road like this.
And that should then, well,
And then 3 to
sure.
4 inches of bituminous.
I'm sure everybody has Amazon trucks going up and down their streets throughout the day, but I mean, that will handle that kind of traffic. Is
Yeah.
there a certain threshold above which really trucks shouldn't be, like, I don't know, 10,000 pounds or what? Well,
the garbage trucks are usually the biggest culprits, and degrading these local streets. They're, they're heavier equipment.
But our streets are rated.
They're rated. We're building it to a 7-ton design, and then you're seeing like Portland, for example, a collector roadway, county roadway is usually built to a 9-ton per axle to 10-ton per axle design, but neighborhood streets are usually a 7-ton.
And a garbage truck is 7 ton or less?
Well, they have to stay under that with their per axle weight. But garbage trucks are it's always difficult for them to know what their weight is, because it's changing every.
Aren't we
every
renegotiating
pickup.
the Republic contract soon?
We sure are.
Let's think about
I
that.
was going to say to your point, road project that, as the chair pointed out, we look at a lot of these. A couple of years ago, we had one where they had a bad section, just like you had mentioned into Mallard Ponds, and they did take specific steps to take out the subsoil under that to eliminate the problem that appeared to have been there. And so I think they know those areas, and hopefully it'll be addressed.
They become evident as you're rolling it.
Yeah, and just one other comment too, and I'm sure, again, you know that I can remember, we worked with Kent Jefferson, lived next to us for a long time there. So I remember Kent saying that the old neighborhood was like pretty much sugar sand soil, and our neighborhood was, heavy clay up by Portland, and then down at the other end, it was kind of that sugar sand. So there's a lot of variation in the neighborhood, which I know complicates everything. I'm sure the contractor started one way and kind of made assumptions, and then it changed suddenly. So, it's probably a challenge, so.
I think that's some of the geotechnical
Yeah.
work those point out those differences. So hopefully we've got a good handle on it.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, anyone else?
Hey, Chris Hitzke, 5954 Mallard Ponds Drive, White Bear Lake. So, committee members, I have some questions about pond maintenance. I think that was one of the things that came up in there. What does that entail? Can you please explain that to me?
Sure. So usually when a neighborhood is first developed, those ponds are built to handle the capacity and runoff that flow off of the homes and yards and driveways. Over time, silt fills in. Usually with the home building process is the worst time, where during the home building process, materials get into our catch basins and our storm sewers and flow into the ponds. And so we need to restore that capacity. So it's going into those ponds and draining them and digging out the material to restore the capacity.
Okay. Okay, and then another question I have is, in the street signs around the neighborhood, they're all which way, they're bent over and everything. Does this project include cleaning up those street signs and straightening them out? It does?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and then the other question I have is, this neighborhood still has a lot of young kids in it. All my kids are moved away and everything. But the main thing is the speeding in the neighborhood. Definitely, if you could apply more signs as far as speed limits and stuff like that. We have little kids across the way. I would hate to see anything happen to them. And the other thing is, I'm definitely all for this project. My next door neighbor's over here. Because, one day I'd go out by the mailbox, I can sit there with a shovel, not kidding you, I can go all the way across the other side of the street and dig up all the asphalt. So it definitely needs to happen.
So you're looking for a job there, Chris?
No, I'm too old for that. So, no, but that's it. Thank you very much.
One comment on the stormwater ponds, just is a little more on what he says. It's not like they can just come in and just dig it out and put it out in a field someplace.
Yep.
The state has gotten very particular on the clean out of those because they have harmful chemicals in them, and it costs the township a lot of money, to do that. But we need to stay ahead of it because they have to have so much retention.
Yeah, what we did this past year, me and my neighbors around the big pond that we are on, we essentially had all the green, stuff, sediment showing in there and everything. So we went through a place called Lake Management. They went in there and sprayed it. Now it's all clear, looked great over the whole season. We're probably going to do the same thing. So I'm not sure what, have to keep in contact with exactly what you're going to do as far as pond maintenance
And timing, yeah.
and time and everything. So,
Well, and the worst part is, now that we're gonna have nice new roads next fall, that speeding might get a little worse. So I think, well, Scott sits on our public safety as a liaison, but we can have them at least bring it up, and between Patrick and public safety, we could maybe have the Ramsey County Sheriff just do a little bit better patrolling over there.
Yeah.
All you need is a little presence, and that kind of curbs it.
It does help.
yeah, I mean, we had one incident in the neighborhood, and my neighbors were out there, and we saw it. You know, this one guy in the neighborhood essentially stopped this young kid in the corner, and the older guy just yelled at the kid for 30 minutes. You know, that's how bad it's gotten in the neighborhood as far as speeding. So, but just FYI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things on the speeding, this is kind of a self-contained neighborhood. There's not a lot of there isn't really cut through traffic. I think it's the best method I would say is getting word out to your neighbors and spread the word about the speeding, because the speeders are the people that live in the neighborhood. They're visitors. So I would say try to talk to your neighborhoods. It's usually what I've seen is some of those younger drivers that don't know any better. I have one at home now that I sometimes fearful to drive with them. But you know, talking to some of those kids like you mentioned.
There's one more thing I sorry to just bring up real quick. On the utility boxes and, you know, in front of these people's yards and everything, I heard comments you have to go to the utilities company, you know, because some of them over 25 years, you know, have either been rusted or, you know, they look like crap. So I contacted my power company and I essentially did a spray paint, gray spray paint on the power box to clean that up. Is there any restrictions from the township perspective on whether we can paint those or not and clean them up?
I don't know.
No,
That might be a
Okay.
no, that's private property.
We can do what
we
we
have no
want with them as
control.
long as utilities sign off on it.
We don't see it.
Okay, perfect.
Is that Connexus I can't remember if that's Connexus out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will have a utility meeting with the private utility companies and let them know about the project. Sometimes they can choose to upgrade facilities with these projects. And we can mention that some of the,
Definitely we could mention it. You know, some of them are leaning way over and 25 years takes its impact.
yeah.
All right, anyone else?
Lori Kilbasa, 5852 Red Pine Boulevard. My question is primarily about the assessment as to process and how it's established. At the meeting last week, we were told that there was a process whereby it would be capped, and that we wouldn't be assessed anything over a certain amount. I don't understand that process. It isn't anywhere on your website. I'm trying to figure out what that means, how that works, what it might be. He was throwing out between 6,000 and 10,000. And my question was, what about overruns? What about change orders? What about all of that stuff? And especially since the assessment won't be assigned until after the project is finished, I want to know what the cap is, how it's established, where it comes from, what the process is, how that works.
The cap is the amount approved tonight. They can't, okay, you talked about cost overruns.
Right.
That's not allowed. And from the standpoint that the town cannot increase the assessment due to cost overruns. What could happen is this: if after all the bids are in, it turns out that the cost is underestimated, the town board could simply drop the whole project,
Okay.
start all over again. But once you adopt the amount, that's it. That is the cap.
Oh, so you could start all over again and charge us more.
Well, if we delay a project, it's only going to get more expensive the next year.
See, that's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If for some reason the costs are greater than what is expected, the choice of the town board is either drop the project completely or restart it all over again and reassess it. But you'd know about that.
Okay.
But the fact is, there is a cap.
So what is the cap as of tonight?
8,000?
8,000.
So it
8,000,
will not go to the 10,000 that he was talking.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
And like I said before, if we get great bidding and the contract price come in cheaper, that number could possibly come down.
Which
But
would
we
be
can't
great.
go over it.
Okay. But if it does come in twice as much, say, you guys will say we can't do it and you'll start the whole thing over.
Or we would have to try to find other funding to help.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, those are the options.
I was just unclear as to the process and understanding how that all works.
That's a fair
So,
question.
Yes.
okay.
It's not something it's a black box, basically, of the statute. But the bottom line is actually it's a relatively, if you read the statute, it's pretty clear. And I know you haven't, I don't blame you.
I mean, I perused your website trying to find all this stuff. I really researched a
It's-
good
it's-
bit and I couldn't see it.
Understand this is all done within the statutory framework.
Okay.
And and the statutory framework is basically, we adopt a feasibility study, or we being the town board adopts a feasibility study, that sets the costs. If it turns out the contracts are greater than that feasibility study, then the town board has two choices, either stop the project or start all over again.
So my question is for the TDK people, or TKDA. How was that 1,000 established then?
Okay, so maybe I can explain things maybe a little bit differently than how Chad explained it. So he's right, we have to follow the Minnesota statutes 429 for our process to be able to assess. And that process establishes that we cannot assess you more than the benefit that the project, that your home receives on the project. So
And I heard that the last time, and I
Yeah.
beg to differ because our assessment already, our cost, what we can sell our home for is already over what we're probably able to sell. So that statement kind of made me go, oh my gosh, no.
that's the way the statute reads.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, you can't sell for what they're telling us even our tax assessment is right now. And we just got jumped with a new tax assessment. So additionally, you're telling me it's going to cost me that much more or my value is going to raise that much more. I don't believe it. So I know it's all state mandated.
No. Actually, that's constitutional. And that's one point that's very clear. The town cannot assess you more than the benefit you receive, and the benefit is defined as increase in value. Anything above any assessment that exceeds the benefit you receive from the improvement is considered to be a taking under the Constitution.
And I agree.
Therefore, yeah, believe it or not, the court agrees with you too. And so therefore, it's not allowed. So the cap is whatever the benefit is. That's why we're having an appraisal done, to determine what the benefit actually is. And if the benefit, that's another good point too, if the benefit determined by the appraiser is less than what the assessment is, then the town board's got to look at everything all over again too.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's a
And-
lot
and
of
so-
gray
I was
here.
gonna say,
That's what
and-
I'm
and-
trying to
and
hear, that kind of hearing.
Chad didn't touch on this, but at the end of all this, when we get to the fall, when we have the final numbers, and that assessment number is given, you have options at that point to say, I don't agree with it, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, to get to the end, there'll be a hearing for the levied assessment. If you believe that that levied assessment exceeds the benefit you're going to receive in terms of increase in value of your property, you have the right to appeal that assessment. And what we'll do is this: at that levied, prior to the levied assessment hearing, you'll receive a notice as to what has to be done to appeal your assessment, and we'll go through that again at the hearing. One point we want to make clear is we want to make sure you understand your rights to appeal, and we want to make sure that if you want to appeal, you have the right, you properly exercise that right, so you don't lose it.
Here in person, correct?
Would I have
Oh,
to
yeah.
provide my own assessment for my home?
Excuse me?
Do I have to do my own assessment then for my home? I mean, I understand your assessment is going to be the cost benefit.
Okay, we're kind of getting our head, okay.
I understand that, but this is all process, and I'm trying to figure out how it works.
Okay, well, let's answer that last question for you. Let's assume you want to appeal your assessment. Then assuming you've taken all the proper steps, because there are steps that are required under the statute, if you've done all that, there will be a trial, at district court. And you can come in and say, I believe the value of my property was only increased by X number of dollars. The town will have an appraiser come in, will say, we believe it's increased by Y number of dollars. You also have the right to hire your own appraiser to come in and indicate I agree with the landowner, it's only increased by X number of dollars. So there's an actual, if it goes that far, there's an actual trial which you can hold, at which point the district court, a judge, will determine whether or not the value you receive is exceeded by the cost that you're assessed. If that happens, then they have to reassess. We have to reassess everything.
I guess my point is to try to get to process before that happens, and that we end up knowing what's going on. And I feel very much like there's a lot of gray involved in this whole process right now, and that's scary to me. So I'm not comfortable.
The biggest gray is that no matter what we visualize this project, we haven't got
You
a
don't
firm
know.
cost of
No.
what it's going to be until the bids
Right?
are out and brought back and either accepted or rejected. It's
Yep.
just conversation at this
Yep.
time.
I get it. I understand that. I just want you to go slow and be careful.
Believe.
So thank you.
Yep.
So on the assessed value, we have two ways of paying that, right? We can pay it within 30 days or via property taxes over 10 years. Is that correct? From my understanding?
That's correct.
And if you do it in the first 30 days, there's no interest to it.
However, they halfway through that payment process, they have the right to come in and pay the thing off, whatever's left.
Right, exactly. At any time, you can pay your assessment in full,
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
except for one thing.
Hold on one thing.
And the one thing is this, interest is actually charged on an annual basis. It's not per diem. So if you pay your assessment off, you're going to be paying an entire, if you don't pay it off within 30 days, you'll be paying 1 year's worth of interest. Okay, no, that's just the way it works. Statutorily, that's how it works. But can I make a couple more comments? I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of how this works, but the feasibility study, that has to be done under statute. If the feasibility study wasn't done, then we could not adopt an assessment. That's a statutory requirement.
Yeah, maybe I can also clarify that, we're looking at these costs, we're comparing it against projects that were recently completed to assign the right cost per unit for the quantities that we computed for this neighborhood improvement. We like to think we're a little bit higher now, and that costs will be lower when we get a bid. We generally aim a little higher because we don't know all the specifics of this neighborhood until we design it. So our quantities are maybe a little bit higher now than we hopefully have when we do the work, and some of these costs will come down as we get a bid.
All right, anyone else? I think you guys covered it. All right, hearing none, I'm going to entertain a motion to close the public portion.
I'll move to close the public portion of the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, any more questions for staff or the attorney? Hearing none. You want this one broken down also in two, Larry?
Yes.
Again, the first one is ordering improvements.
Mr. Chair, based on town engineer and staff review and recommendations, I'll adopt the resolution ordering improvement 2023-2.
I will second that.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous. And then the second one is plans and specs.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a recommendation to order preparation of plans and specifications at a cost not to exceed $171,800.
I will second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. All right, thank you, folks.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if there's any questions along the way here, our contact information's up, and I believe it was mailed out as well. So if there's questions along the way, give us a call. Thank you.
All right, we're going to jump to 7B. This is the ordinance number 54, considering amendment 54, which is our fee schedule. Who's taking that one?
Good evening, Board. The building department went through and reviewed their building permit fees recently as part of our transition to an online permitting software. We had to go through basically tabulate all the fees and send that over to them via spreadsheets. Karen and Mike thought it might be a good time to go through and review those
I got
fees
back
at
up
this
here.
time.
This is also a public hearing, so I need a motion to waive the reading.
I'll move to waive the reading that was properly published.
Too excited.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Then I need a motion to open up the public hearing.
I'll move to open up the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, Evan.
Can you start from the beginning?
Mike and Karen went through, reviewed their building permit fees, wanted to make sure they're up to date, reflected the true costs of what's going on throughout the township for development. After they did that, we went through and thought we might as well reformat everything else, make sure it's all nice and tidy so that hopefully it's easier for both staff and the public to use the fee schedule moving forward. And so before you tonight is a new draft of the fee schedule. I would note again, the only changes to any fees were those building permits, which I believe are the first 2 or 3 pages. And then you do see subsequently after is the planning fees, some of your business license, rentals, some of the other miscellaneous fees. And so tonight before you is that draft ordinance, and you do have the option to either adopt it tonight, or if you have further questions, we can always table it.
Scott, you go through it? Any?
I think we discussed this briefly at the last executive meeting, and I have no questions on it.
You?
I would pretty much agree. But one question, I do have one question, has to do with the review process going forward, because you mentioned we're going to an online process. Well, as part of this, is there a recommendation, I don't remember seeing it, that is going to be reviewed annually, at least?
I mean, that's up to the board. You can always review it as often as you want. I
What
think.
happens with our permitting process, it seems like we have big gaps in time as to when we get to it. But I guess, from my perspective, I would like it reviewed annually, at least sign off that it's been considered. They don't have to change necessarily, but so we don't get so far out of whack.
Agreed.
So, instead of that.
Yeah, typically 1, 3, 5 is probably the common time
3 and
periods.
5. So 3 from your experiences also.
Yep.
Is one year burdensome?
It's honestly whatever each community feels is appropriate. So some are every 6 months, every year. Others usually may wait a little while. So it's up to the board. I think ideally, from probably a staff perspective, it'd probably make most sense to look at it every year, make sure we're on top of everything.
Well, there's going to be some water penalty fees that
Yep.
fluctuate. And
Yeah, so-
we're not sure what's going to happen
Big
there. So,
one.
So annually.
right, so at least till we get that resolved.
Okay.
Or you can do amendments to the fee schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you find something 6 months in, hey, maybe we should look at this, or if something comes up, you always have that right to amend it whenever as well.
We did, or, well, never mind. I have to mention my past employer.
No.
Never mind.
I have no further questions.
All right, hearing no further questions, I need a motion to open up for public comment.
I'll move to open the hearing for public comment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? This is a hot ticket item. Rick, you got anything? All right, hearing no public comment, I need a motion to close the public portion.
I'll close the public portion, make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, if there's no other questions, looks like we want a,
Well, I guess we're going to move to amend the ordinance 54
Yep.
to the attached schedule with the understanding of annual review by the planner and staff.
I will second.
all right, motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Item 7A is a non-conforming use permit for Peterson Road. Again, I need a motion to waive the reading.
I'll move to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And I need a motion to open up for public, or open up the public hearing.
I'll move to open up the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, who's taking this one?
I will. Good evening, Chair and Supervisors. You've probably seen me around a few times. It's my first time speaking to you
Kelly, you want to introduce
at a
yourself?
meeting. Yes, my name is CJ Sykes. I started with DKDA a little over 6 months ago now. Been working with Evan with our planning clients, and
And you're still
Shadow.
with them?
yeah, crazy. But I've been shadowing him through almost every meeting that we have now. And I worked on reviewing this case before you.
You haven't scared her away yet.
No, it's been enjoyable.
We'll see how the evening goes.
That's right.
All right.
That is young.
I think we're past the intense portion. This property is located in the northwest area of the township, west of Interstate 35E. We're looking at a non-conforming use permit renewal at 5566 Peterson Road. It's about 4.5 acres in the R1 district. Part of the west side of the property is leased by the town as Garley Park. If you look at the red outline of the property, you can see that big patchy grassy area. That lease ends in 2025. It is currently North Oaks Lawn Service. The business has 4 employees and runs generally Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. with the understanding that they also do snow removal, so there may be some early morning snow plows going through there. It provides lawn-related and snow plowing services in the area, operating out of the existing barn on the east side of the property, just over 3,500 square feet, and a smaller, about 600 square foot building used for off-season equipment storage. It's a non-residential use, so it is obviously not permitted in the R1 district. The previous owner has had a non-conforming use permit for their commercial fencing business until 2010 when the owners changed. The current applicant was issued a non-conforming use permit in 2010, 2013, and lastly in 2016. And their business license has been renewed every year since 2010. A township fire department inspection was done in 2021. The only comment was a fuel tank that needed to be moved. The applicant stated at the planning commission meeting for this that they are working with the building department to make that happen. Non-conforming use permits can be issued for up to 5 years, and the process for issuing that permit is the same as a conditional use permit. As you noticed, the last non-conforming use permit was granted in 2016 for 5 years, which means it expired in 2021. But per the ordinance, it explains that with the renewal of the business permit yearly, it continues the conditional use permit with it. The criteria for a non-conforming use permit is listed in your staff report, and based on the information provided by the applicant, the zoning code, and the comprehensive plan, the criteria all appear to be met. Like I said, the Planning Commission reviewed it at the November 30th meeting, and they concurred with the findings and the conditions recommended by staff. So tonight you have the opportunity to either approve with or without the conditions, deny it with the findings, or table the request for further review and study, if you'd like. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the non-conforming use permit for 5566 Peterson Road to allow commercial use of the property within the R1 zoning district with the conditions listed in the staff report and on the following slides. There are 11 of them. Would you like the conditions read aloud to you?
Everybody's had a chance to look at them, so.
Perfect. Any questions?
I have one. First off, did the planning commission, did they have a discussion about the I'll call it non-conforming fuel storage and a time frame of when this is going to get addressed?
Could you ask that one more time?
You mentioned in one of your slides about fuel storage that's being addressed.
Yes.
From a board perspective, I don't work well in fuzzies. I'd like to have it by a deadline so that there's some urgency to fixing something. So was it discussed at all, to your knowledge?
A set timeline was not discussed.
Okay.
It was asked by the Planning Commission to the applicant, and the applicant stated that they would be working with the building department.
Is this
Feel free to-
removal or a containment built under it? That's probably an issue with
What's the issue?
building.
I'm not familiar with the issue.
Mike noted the proximity of, I believe, the fuel tank to, I believe one of the entrances or exits to the building was the issue. And so if you guys want to set a timeline as part of the conditions of this, you
Well, let's
certainly
back
may.
up. So Mike wants it moved away from the door, or he wants it moved completely off property?
He wants it moved away from the door.
Okay, and then did he want a containment deal underneath it? We'll get to you.
He hasn't specified to me whether that would be required or not.
All right, what else, Steve?
The other question I have, again, it says about the trees and waste shall be transferred off-site in the spring and in the fall. I think that was one of the past ones, and I assume that's still one of the first ones, or new ones. I would like the language to have, what does that mean, spring and in the fall? I'd rather have it like end of May and end of November so that it's clear to
Do you want
both
like a hard
parties.
date? Like,
No, just end of the month of one of the months. I don't particularly care if it's May or April or whatever, but at least so it's clear, that's from my perspective, so that Mike has something to say, it didn't happen. Well, then it gets into what is the end of May, spring, and what is the end of fall.
That's a good point.
So I would prefer a month. So
Recommend
end of-
setting a deadline, basically.
Yeah, similar to our ordinance that deals with parking.
Yep.
We say, end of April and November, so. Outside of that, I don't have any other questions, but.
Well, you got a suggestion? Would you
Well,
want?
I do, I guess I'd.
But I mean, would
we
you
could-
want it related to, say, snow plowing?
Well, it says trees and yard waste must be transferred in the spring and in the fall.
Well, that's when we either start and stop on-street parking, so. Would those numbers work? I don't know if it's what, November 1st, April 1st, or something like that?
Isn't removal of yard waste different, in a different situation than parking?
Yeah.
So, but
I guess it's a question
Or
of
do you have to go
when is the end of spring?
Do you just go with the calendar? When's the end of spring? When's the last day of spring?
It's a moot term. That's why I said I'd do it on a month. If to me, summer starts 1st of June, so end of May. I'd say May and whatever in November, that'd be my suggestion, and end of November, so by December 1st, pretty well winter time by then. Is that doable?
Well, we'll find out here in a minute.
Well, it's a conversation. So outside, that's the only questions I have. I'd like that consideration.
The outside storage that's considered inside that fence line? Is that how the planning commission viewed it?
Yes.
And so anything outside that fence line have to be moved inside or removed? That's what they're asking? Okay. All right, any other questions of the board? Hearing none, I need a motion to open up for public comment.
I'll move to open up the hearing for public comment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All right, applicant's here, you want to come up?
Mr. Chair, before you, isn't this the property, we have a problem with the vagrant living in a trailer?
That's part of the reason why
So that's one of the things we should talk about as well.
that's why I was specifically finding out about something parked outside that fence area.
Okay.
Name and address.
Rick Ringo, 5566 Peterson Road. He moved out last Saturday.
Is the trailer gone?
All gone.
All right.
Thank you.
Yay.
You've just made a bunch of friends.
Oh, now, do you understand the question about the tank? Is Mike asking you to?
I know exactly what's going on with the tank. So it's not a Mike issue, it's a fire marshal issue.
Okay,
However, the township is also in violation, so it's kind of been in this limbo. Because, so basically the state fire marshal has a mandate on how close to the property lines, how close to the buildings, fuel storage tank. So at the township, you've got your 2,000-gallon tanks, you're in violation also.
But we're talking about your
I
tank.
understand that, but, so.
No, we're talking about your tank.
Okay, well, you're gonna make me move mine, but you guys aren't gonna move yours?
We'll do whatever we have, we'll do what we're required to do, but we're talking about your tank right now. So let's deal with your tank, okay?
Okay.
so again, is he asking for containment underneath it?
No, it's already a double containment.
Oh,
tank.
okay, that's where I was going with it.
Right, no. It's a movement issue.
Okay. So you're working with him to get that handled?
Yes.
And that's the only thing that the board has an issue with right now?
On that tank, is there, my question really has to be, You know, it's like most of our things, we like to have some finite date as when it should be addressed, so that if it isn't, then we have to come back before us and say, what's the status? I mean, that's where I'm at, is I want to have some finality to it, not 3 years from now or next year or 2 years from now, without having known what's going on, because then we're really not addressing, we're just kicking it down the road. And so what's reasonable, do you think?
I mean, to me, what's reasonable is when it's being addressed to everyone else. There's other private vendors also. I'm not saying I'm against doing whatever needs to happen. Let me be clear on that. But I'm not gonna bend over and have to do all this, and I can point to 10 other people in the township that have the same exact situation, and they're not having to do the same thing. That's what my point is. I'm not saying that, no, I won't do it or anything like that, so don't take that the wrong way. So I don't know, I know that's not what you want to hear, but
Rick, we are literally a complaint-driven township.
Yep.
So we don't know about issues until someone either complains about it or the building inspector discovers them. And
he knows
that-
all about it. Okay,
when we have a whole 12,000 residents and 5,000 properties, and I don't know, 200 businesses, we are just systematically working on all of this. RV parking in the driveway, we're working on it. It doesn't happen overnight, and that's all I can say. It's the same with fencing, same with people building without permits. It's just a process that we work on. So I don't want to, so I'm not going to sit here and argue about who does what. All I'm saying is, if you're working with the building inspector, and if you have a timeline where both of you are comfortable with at least or the fire marshal, at least appeasing that, that's what we're looking for, just a date.
I guess I don't, because now I'll have to contact the tank provider, because we'll have to change the pumping system, and I don't know how long that, I lease it from them. So now that it has to be moved, it's gonna have to become solar instead of power and blah, 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 blah. But they're gonna have to provide that to me, so I don't know if that's something they have on their shelf, if it's something they need to order for 6 months out, I have no idea. Because if I move it, then I can't use it,
Gotcha.
you know.
Yeah,
So I can call them tomorrow morning and say, we need to move it, so what is it gonna take to make this happen? And I guess that would be,
All right, well, where I'm going with this is, we can make the new CP conditional on you giving us a finite date within the next week on when it'll be moved. I think that's what Steve's looking for.
or you could tie it to the business permit. I have to apply for another business permit this year. So it has to be an inspection by the building inspector, has to come out.
Well,
And we tie it to that.
I think maybe that could be worked out with staff and Mike.
And Mr. Chair, you could also do it the same way you did with United Forest Products, is simply ask Mr. Regal to come back in maybe month, 2 months, and report as to where you stand, what progress you're making, too. That's what we've done before.
That seemed to serve our purpose pretty well, so that we keep it moving forward.
Come or just notify you, or notify Evan, or.
Mike actually is who, it's really.
Yeah, and Mike can give the board an update at our executive
That's how
committee.
we did it with United Forest. Mike, you gave your information to Mike. Mike provided it to us as on an ongoing basis as to progress. And then the other issue is the dates for trash or for yard.
Well, you know
waste.
better than anybody, if you gotta move it twice a year, what timeframes work for you?
Well, so what the problem is so like we've been moving, like we moved 60 loads out already so far since we ended doing fall cleanups until today. So what the problem is, if it freezes hard or we get 8 inches of snow, we can't move it anymore because everything's frozen solid. So to set a hard date of November 1 or November 30th, typically this is a non-typical year. So forget everything you know right now. Typically we're doing fall cleanups one day, we're plowing the next day. So there's not a lot of window. Now, if it doesn't freeze, so really what it is a big pile of leaves and debris, yard debris, stuff we pick up with our mowers, and we just make a pile of it. Then we haul it to another site, actually up in East Bethel, and they take it, and we pay to have them dispose it. So it's a driving thing and moving it, but there becomes a limit where we can't get into it any longer. So I understand your ambiguity, but this year, yeah, I mean, we're still working on it to get it out of there. And actually, after this year, we'll be, I did this last year also. It got, even though it wasn't mandated, irrigated, we hauled out semis full, and then again, it froze, so once we get to our best case scenario, if you will, where like everything's gone, it doesn't take as much, but it's very difficult if you're gonna set a hard date, and then, well, what happens on November 30th, when we may still be doing cleanups even?
Are you susceptible to road restrictions then, if you're talking
No,
semis?
because I have a 1-ton dump truck, like
Oh.
a pickup truck.
All right.
So it's not a road restriction issue. And they're all 10-ton roads, it's 242 Lexington, all main roads.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, it sounds more like a best effort situation here. As long as he makes his best effort to get everything removed by a certain date, that's all you can expect.
Those dates are still out there.
Well,
Does twice a year suffice? And it's
Yeah,
up
because
to
we
you to
only
when you do the
accumulate
twice.
a year,
Right.
basically. We accumulate it in the fall, and we accumulate it in the spring. In the spring is lesser than in the fall. So right now is the big push. In the spring, the pile is substantially smaller. So then, and of course, then we have the summer. So it doesn't freeze. We can continue to get it all taken care of.
I was kind of naive as I might be, but I was looking at it, that area there has gotten new development off of Peterson Road, and I was thinking piled up debris, yard waste and things, that's a great place for rodents to decide they want to live, and then the neighbors are complaining. I was absolutely saying, well, there's nothing for us to say you're required to move it when it just says spring and fall. That's why I was trying to get more finite so that we had something, a little more meat on it for.
Well, and it butts up to 35E, so it's as far away from
As far away
humans as
Okay.
possible.
I wasn't
'Cause it's
quite
there-
where it was
Yeah.
even on the property, so I'll withdraw if that's.
well, no, it's not, if I may, Mr. Chair, it's not a bad idea to set some deadlines, but reasonable deadlines on what you expect. As I say, best efforts. If by this date you've got it as much as you can, let's say you set November 15th as a deadline, and you moved pretty much everything by November 15th, and you're still cleaning yards up after that point, and it freezes.
But we won't be hauling.
Well, I'm just saying.
Go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, if you're still if still cleaning up yards after November 15th and putting debris storing debris, and it freezes, you can't be expected to move that till next spring. So I think deadlines make sense, but deadlines applied reasonably is what you're looking for.
Yeah, if you can word it, I'm good for it.
I mean, this is also my 10th year, so I'm fine working with a generality. I mean, it's not like this is my first year and I just am trying to pull shenanigans.
I know. But as we go through.
Shenanigans, Rick? You're showing your age.
Well, you will do what I meant, so, okay.
I'll just defend myself a little bit. As we go through a lot of these things that have happened in the past, we find little things that say, really, it's so fuzzy, we don't give anybody any meat or potatoes to enforce it. So I'm one that likes, my wife tells me I got to have it done by Saturday. I need to know that she really wants it done by Saturday and not 2 Saturdays from now.
Sure.
So that's why I was looking for a date. So what's
Well, what you could say is this, you could simply say that by this date, let's say November 15th, just to pick a date, all the material on site will be removed. What accumulates after that point will be removed again on the spring date of May 31st. Are you gonna, it's a compromise. It's, again, best effort. That's all you can really expect.
That's fine. How do you rate it? I'm good with that.
All right, Scott? I will say I was a little concerned when Peterson Road got done. I thought it's going to be a racetrack now. I will recommend or commend you guys that you're holding the speeds down, because there's people right out there that will let me know if you're going too quick.
Oh, yeah?
So on that, I mean, you're doing a good job there. Now, have you had any complaints about dust down at the other end?
But no, because it's only me and Kenny and,
there's a couple houses.
and
so-
Garley's house, so there's nobody down there.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, any other questions? All right, thanks, Rick.
Yep.
All right, I need a motion to close the public portion.
I'll move to close the public portion of the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right. Let's see, let's go back. I don't know, Steve, you want to alter that one to your liking?
Yes, but I got to have staff work on the exact verbiage for best reasonable, whatever your terminology was on that. But that just says approve this with the recommendations as noted, just modifying let's see, where is it? Item 4 with more specific, no, it's not number 4. Which one is it? Oh,
Should be number
yes, number 4. Just modifying that with a little caveat for best efforts, and then should we add one to have this fuel tank addressed? Add some feedback.
It wouldn't hurt to have either staff or the applicant check back with us on progress.
Yes, within 90 days. Is that so?
That should be feasible.
Yeah, I'd recommend that we add a condition to have the fuel storage issue readdressed in 90 days from this date as to progress made to rectify the situation.
Mr. Chair can make a recommendation. That language simply requires staff report back to you within 90 days as to the status of the fuel and the status of moving the fuel tank.
I'll agree to that.
Is that it?
Yep.
I will second.
All right, motion made, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thanks, Rick. Hey, thanks again for getting that issue resolved.
Yes, thank you.
It went better than I thought it would. So I was surprised also.
All right, moving on. 8A, we have tabled, and we have no other agenda items, so, and no one now is here for open time. Steve, you had something you wanted to bring up?
Yes, I just want to make a public announcement as it relates to voting. At our last meeting, we commented about the polling places changing for the township in precinct 1. But I just wanted to make sure everybody that's listening knows that absentee ballot or voting for the presidential primary begins January 19th. And the Ramsey County has a good website if they're interested in knowing where they can vote in person or how to get absentee ballots. It's now from January 19th through March 4th, with the primary election January 5th, or excuse me, March 5th.
All right,
That's all I wanted to say.
Scott, you got anything? All right, hearing none. I need a motion to receive agenda material and supplements.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Need a motion to adjourn at 8:37.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.